don't believe so. I don't believe so, but if I tell you I'm sure, I'll be lying.
Well, that's okay if everyone can just forgive me in case you hear some background noise.
Oh, there's Doug.
There we go.
He got voluntold.
Yes.
Doug, are your ears burning?
No, but I think they should be, right?
I was just saying I'm remote today, so if you're willing, would you mind sharing?
Well, golly sakes.
Yeah, you could ask me for the payback later.
All right. Sure. So
I'll still be here, but thank you.
Call a meeting to order. Welcome everyone. And so Stoyan, if you want to kind of do a roll call through the committee members, and then we'll ask those members of the public who want to introduce themselves to do so.
Yes, and I want to start again. I have my monitors on the side, so when you guys see me looking left and right, don't get offended. I just my stuff is on the bigger monitor, so I apologize in advance. So let's start with Todd.
Yes, here.
Doug.
Well, other way around here. Yes, Todd's here.
Diane. Okay. Andrew.
I'm here.
Chill. No. Okay. Phil is here.
Yes, present.
So I think we have a quorum and we can start.
All right. Are there any members of the public that would like to introduce themselves? So please do so now.
This is Tony Doan, the fire take chair.
Okay.
This is Brian Smith. I work for the City of Bellevue Building Department, just an observer today.
Okay. Welcome. Anyone else?
Muted, Ken.
All right.
It's Barbara McMullen from the State Fire Marshal's Office. I'm just an observer.
All right. Welcome. All right. So moving on to item 2, review and approve the agenda. I'd ask that committee members review the agenda, and when you feel that you're ready, make a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Review and approve the meeting minutes from last week, January 22nd. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to look at those, and unless there's some discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve last week's minutes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Stoyan, I will turn it over to you to lead us through an update on our tracking log.
Carla, I'm sorry, Krista. Can you put the lock on? Krista? Okay, I can put mine then. Let me share my screen. Oh, okay.
All right.
Sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute as I was trying to do that. I got everything locked up for a second.
Can you go down to January 29th? So it was an easy week based on the number of bills for review, but you will see the bills are in some way complicated. So HB 1050, we talked about this bill a lot on 15th during the first meeting. This is the amended bill. I want to point out to the second bullet point requires the State Building Code Council to solicit input from affected parties. So basically, we do that for all building code proposals, but it just the bill added some specific language for the State Building Code Council. And the other thing is on the meeting on 15th, based on our first evaluation of the bill, we had minor impact for stakeholders. And after evaluating again the bill and after talking to you and other stakeholders, we changed the impact for stakeholders to major. And again, you can use the links and access the website and see the hearings and how the bill is moving.
Okay.
The next one is Senate Bill 5243, and this is the first time we got the bill. In summary, the bill is creating efficiency in housing by streamlining. So the intent of the bill is to streamline the approval process. And what it does is it adds new sections to RCW 9.27, and it really affects the authority of building departments to enforce the state building code. And this bill, Richard and I went back and forth a few times, and finally I agreed with his recommendations. I was looking at the bill from a different side, but what is the important part in this bill? So any building permit application submitted with plan specifications and all other documents, if the plans are signed by a licensed engineer or architect, the bill requires the building department to approve it. This is in a summary what this bill does. And it doesn't really have effect on the State Building Code Council because we refer to the building departments for enforcement of the building codes. But the State Building Code Council may need to, again, if the bill gets approved, to make some changes to the building codes, all building codes, Chapter 1. And we consider that it can be done during the standard rulemaking process. Regarding the impact on stakeholders, we think that there will be a significant impact on licensed professionals and local building departments. Licensed professionals based on their involvement with the design, and the building departments based on the enforcement. Many of these building departments, they already have their administrative provisions. The law allows them to do that. And many of these building departments are amending Chapter 1 of the building code. So this bill will really affect how they do their business.
That would have major impact on local building departments. I just have a hard time getting my brain wrapped around that one.
So how does it change what they're doing now?
Well, code is not always black and white, cut and dried on how to interpret code applications in certain instances. And so if I haven't read the bill, but just taking the summary, looking at the summary, an engineer could interpret it one way and a building official might interpret it another. And based on the summary, the engineer of record would prevail. That's a very significant change.
It is.
So as far as signatures are concerned, they have to sign it now though, right?
They still have to sign it, but but the building official, the building department and their plan review process has the ability to say, we don't agree with this and that and the other thing, and make significant changes. We get sometimes hundreds of pages of notes and comments back on submitted permit drawings that where the building department disagrees with how things are drawn in the plans. So, yeah.
So the engineer's rule trumps the building code.
Well, again, I haven't read the bill yet, but from what Stan and staff has written here as a summary, it sounds like it would.
May I say something? Sorry, may I say something?
Yes,
Phil?
sure.
The engineer doesn't trump the building code. It says that they don't have the authority to override the building code or make something less stringent. But this would just say they wouldn't have to pay for another plan review fee, in short.
Well, it basically restricts the authority of the building department to do plan check on the technical specifications and the plans if the plans are signed by an engineer or an architect. It's been ongoing issue for years, and it's everywhere, California, Oregon, Washington State, everywhere. The question is the qualification of the plan checker or the building inspector versus the license held by the engineer or the architect. So what the bill does, what it says is you have the plans, it's stamped, it's signed, the engineer or the architect is licensed and approved. The bill allows the building departments to review the plans, but only for compliance with the zoning, planning, and other land use requirements, not on the building code.
Not code interpretation.
So this is Todd. I'd be curious if there's any impact on performance-based design. That's what I'm still trying to wrap my head around, and I'll dig deeper, but do we know? I can see past for prescriptive, but I'm not quite sure in terms of energy and structure on performance-based.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of knowledge.
Hi, this is Barbara. I'm going to chime in for just a second. Since I work in the state fire marshal's office, we deal with licensed facilities across the state, like nursing homes, assisted living, childcare centers. How does this impact DOH, Department of Health, Construction Review Services, what they do with regards to reviewing those plans, because they charge a fee for that also?
When you read the bill, it's not really related to the fee. It's the intent is to streamline the process and save some time that is used during the plan review. So sometimes it takes months if you have a big project. And again, it's a personal opinion, but sometimes it takes months to review the project because the plan examiner is reviewing the structural, the architectural part, and even though all those sheets are signed by the architect or engineer, there is a plan check associated with it. And to the best of my understanding, if this bill gets approved, then the architect or the engineer guarantees with the license that this project complies with the building codes, and the building department needs to approve it without the associated plan check. This is how I understand it.
Barbara, can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me for not knowing this, but are your the DOH plan reviews, are those a WAC or an RCW?
Those are WAC.
Okay.
And I believe, and I apologize, I don't know CRS's, all of their rules and regulations. They may have an RCW that gives them that authority to review those plans, because there are WAC rules that are applicable to these facilities that I believe are not necessarily in the code, especially like the nursing homes. They are regulated under the life safety code. And if this says the state building codes only, would there be an issue there?
Definitely something I would have to look into.
Well, I guess for these facilities, they are not under the building department authority. Am I correct on that?
They are to the degree of the permitting process. So it's like a collaborative approach, because for them to get their license, they have to submit to Department of Health, CRS.
Yes, but not to the building department.
They do have to submit to the building department too, wherever that hospital nursing home is going to be built.
Yes, but these are separate parallel approval processes. It's not one is not connected to the other. One is related to the structure and the other one is related to the permit to operate, right?
Okay, right. My concern was that if this one rule, if this bill gets approved, and I apologize, I haven't looked at it, that it doesn't trump the authority that Department of Health has with regards to what they do as part of the licensing of new nursing homes and hospitals and ambulatory surgical centers and assisted living. So that's the only part I was concerned about.
What I know is that the Department of Health is not listed there. It's specific to the cities and counties, but we can further review and do some further research.
Thank you.
All right. Next.
The next one is also interesting, SB 5360, and I will use Richard's terms, and I'll say I goofed on that because I didn't know the history of it, of this bill, but so this is a modification of HB 2701, and currently we're dealing with this bill, HB 2701. The new text in SB 5360, it also adds another option for testing and inspection. Okay, so it's not something that will really affect the State Building Code Council. On the first reading, it was my impression. However, when you tied it to HB 2701, it will add some additional work to the State Building Code Council because the effective date for HB 2701 and for the new bill SB 5360 is July 1st, 2021. And we are kind of behind schedule. Again, not big of a deal with SB 5360, but connected to HB 2701 and taking into account that HB 2701 is already approved, adopted, then it will add some additional workload. And when I say there is no impact on stakeholders, it's a little misleading because currently we are uncertain if there will be any impact on stakeholders.
Can you say that last sentence again? This is Tony Doan. Sorry. What did you say there?
What I said was I have no for impact on stakeholders, but it's a little misleading because it depends on which side you will evaluate the bill. There may be impact on stakeholders, and I'm sure there will be. So that cell here will be corrected. And I specifically asked Ray because he's been dealing with HB 2701 if he wants to add some background and additional information. And Ray, feel free to jump in.
Okay, thank you, Stoyan. Yeah, HB 2701 was approved in March, and it came around with an effective date of July 1. And we have recently just fired up our tags. We've got the mobile fuel done, and now we're working diligently on 2701. But as Stoyan mentioned earlier, the effect on stakeholders, 2701, I would say major. I think there's a couple of people online that would like to speak to that as well. But we are working on 2701 as quickly as possible.
Yeah, this is Tony Doan. I would like to say a couple things on that. First of all, with the time frame of July 1, I don't know with how far, with what the 2701 proposes and the challenges that it brings up specifically for the jurisdictions, and a lot of it being unclear as far as what direction to go with it, as far as, you know, when you cite and how much to cite, and then where that money goes. There's a lot that is put back onto the local jurisdictions as far as what this bill would ask, with very little clarity on how to execute that properly. So I don't know, with the mobile fueling bill and with what our tasks were for that, we had to jump on that right away, being that one had a January 1 deadline. And so I feel like the 2701 and now the associated 5360, really this is about as soon as we could have got to it anyway. There is no time frame here where that would have saved us as far as starting earlier. We didn't have really an opportunity at all to go over this. We are at that point now, and there are some stakeholders with the Washington State Association of Fire Marshals. They're going to be trying to get a hold of the proponents of the bill 5360 to see if they'll accept some of our proposals, if they're willing, to try and fix some of the things in 2701 that, quite frankly, are just very, very unclear at this point.
That's all I had, Stoyan.
Thank you, Ray. Again, what is unique with this bill is it amends something that was adopted last year, and the effective date is approaching, and we are working to follow the already adopted law, the law that is in the codes, and this bill amends something that we are currently working on. That is the weird part.
I'll just add one more thing real quick, that we're used to working with wax, and this is working with an RCW, which is putting a different twist on what we normally do.
Okay. All right, is that it?
Yes, it was, again, good numbers, a good number of bills, not very many.
So why don't we go up to the top of the list, and we don't need to talk about them all, but just roll through maybe and talk about status of the bills we've talked about before. If there's any that we should be paying attention to, or movement. And I guess, are you keeping on the bills that we're tracking that have died in committee or not made it out of committee?
I'm not updating every single bill. What I do, if you go down to HB 1157, Krista, please. Okay, so on HB 1157, under committee action, you will see February 5th schedule for executive session. So what I do, I update and add the approaching hearings and everything that is approaching, and I'm deleting everything that is already done. I keep the links alive. So when you guys want to see if there is something important in this bill, and I also follow the bills. If I see something important, I will add it here. But if it's something that I don't have or I missed, you also, again, can follow the link and see what is going on with that particular bill. I try to update everything.
Okay.
And the first cutoff date is February 11th out of the House of Origin, or committee anyway.
All right. Okay, very good. Anyone else have anything they want to, any of these bills we want to revisit?
This is Ken Brulette, Seattle Fire Department. I was trying to talk earlier, but you guys didn't hear me through the phone. So I connected back up. I kind of would like to know how the legislative committee, this body, can help with any of these Senate bills, specifically the last one, the 5360, with regards to pushing back the effective date. What is your role in helping push that effective date? What can you do?
So, Todd, are you on? You want to answer that, or you want me to answer that?
Actually, Doug, you're probably more qualified, so if you will, please.
All right. So right now, this committee is not authorized to make any recommendation or comment to the legislature. We're simply a committee that reports back to the larger code council. So that kind of issue, we would take it back to the code council at our next regularly scheduled meeting, and then the council could take action to direct us to testify either orally or written testimony on comments such as that. So
so what you're saying is that this body would have to make a motion to present at the next building code council, you know, and have some justification of why they would like that effective date pushed back, right?
Well, that's an interesting point. I don't know that we need a motion per se. I think we, Joanne, remind me when the next council meeting is scheduled for.
February 19th is the next one.
February 19th.
Don't we have one the 12th? Oh, we must have moved it on. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
So, Ken, to answer your question, let's talk about that. I'll talk about that, or Todd can talk about that with staff, and if a motion seems to be appropriate for that, we can take it up at next Friday's meeting, and that will still be in advance of the next council meeting. Is that okay?
I think there is another bill, HB 1084, that you guys decided to follow up with and ask the council to enact on it. Krista, can you remember if there was a vote on it or just a conversation?
I don't
I
think.
think it was just a conversation.
We'll check the minutes and we'll figure that out. We'll update you on this one during the next meeting.
So when you have the state building code council meeting and they ask for committee meeting reports, does one person report back regarding any position that the committee might take on a Senate bill?
Typically in the past, the director, who is in this case now Stoyan, would give a report, and we'd offer a summary of conversations or recommendations that come out of this committee. I don't know that we've done formal motions out of here before. I don't recall that, but I'm old, so I might have forgotten.
Yeah, I'm just looking for, additional support, at the building code council meetings for not only this House bill, or Senate bill, but others that might get proposed, just so the building code council understands that it's, it affects a lot of different jurisdictions, and that it has been discussed not just at the building code council meeting, but it has been discussed at different committee levels.
Right.
And just so they understand that we are talking, and it's just not a last minute, proposal for these things. So I'm just wondering, what authority and power this committee has, and hoping that they can, even during their meeting, they can have a discussion about something and then actually bring that up during the building code council, so they actually understand, oh, hey, guess what? The legislative committee, is in favor of this, even if it's a vote or non-vote, but just, it's a recommendation, that would be fine too.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion over the last several years over the power or lack thereof of this particular committee. And essentially this committee is not empowered to do anything other than report back to the council. We can make recommendations, offer opinions, and we're free to do that with or without a motion. But if I would say, Stoyan, let's plan on next meeting to really do a deep dive on this, the issue that Mr. Roulette has brought up, and be prepared to make motions to make formal recommendations to the council at the following meeting.
Well done.
Doug, this is Todd. Is there, and Stoyan, is there precedent that we would take public comment or public testimony during the council meeting?
During the council, yes, I believe so.
Doug, there will be I'm hoping to have a proposal for the next building code council meeting for House Bill 2701. So there will be public testimony on it at that.
All right. Okay. That answer your question, Todd?
Yep, that seems wise. Thank you.
All right.
All right, thanks, everybody.
All right. I've lost track of the agenda. We went through the list. I don't know that there was anything else specifically on the agenda. Was there, Stoyan?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Unless there's any more questions, comments, or concerns, there we go. Is there
the other business?
any other business from the public?
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Helen Walter Terranoni. I'm not sure the process to ask to speak. I thought there might be a hand raised, but I don't see it. So
Now's the time.
okay. Hi, my name is Helen Walter Terranoni, and I work for the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. We represent more than 90% of the air conditioning manufacturers in the country. And I wanted to just mention in HB 1050, a modification was made last week. Representative Dye introduced an amendment that was partially agreed upon, requiring that the Building Code Council shall adopt rules that allow the use of substitutes, talking about refrigerants, as defined in Section 2 of this Act, with a lower global warming potential than alternative substances, to the maximum extent practicable, and only if the substitutes do not present a risk to building occupant safety, and applicable provisions of the fire code or best practices to reduce fire risks. That amendment, I think, is going to create some challenges. Firstly, there's no air conditioning or commercial refrigerant that is risk-free. Current and future refrigerants displace oxygen and can cause frostbite to exposed skin. The current refrigerants are not non-flammable, and the combustion products of the current refrigerants are the same as the future refrigerants, hydrogen fluoride and carbonyl fluoride. Secondly, Underwriters Laboratory has just completed a project to design a fire service training a program for first responders that will be free by FSRI, the Fire Services Research Institute, and the fire service representatives involved in the project have told us that this training will address their concerns. We've also been told that by the fire services representatives involved in the project that the project confirmed that these refrigerants do not behave like propane. They're difficult to ignite. Common household items won't ignite them. They add little combustion energy to fires, less than 6 pounds of dry firewood, and the flame speeds are very slow, allowing for time to respond. For context, less than 4 gallons of these difficult to ignite refrigerants will be used in large air conditioning systems. So the probability of an ignition for these flammable fluids is higher is low because there are not very many competent ignition sources available for these refrigerants, unlike hydrocarbons, and the risk is a function of probability and severity. And all of these hydrocarbon heating fluids are allowed in homes, even though the risk is higher. Separately, I just wanted to note that there is technician training available, and that will be on the internet starting in February. So I just wanted to mention it. That's a lot of background information, but I just wanted to mention that I think that the Code Council is being asked to act as a clearinghouse for refrigerants, which the EPA already does. They look at all sorts of safety and toxicity issues and address those issues at the national level. So I think this has created a challenge that maybe the Building Code Council is ill prepared to address and may prove to be difficult to address long term.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. Anyone on the committee have any follow-up questions or comments? Okay. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to bring up anything under other business? Committee members want to bring anything up under other business?
I'll
All
take
right,
point of,
go ahead.
I was just going to take point of privilege to say, I guess Richard actually meant it. So said goodbye to him 13 times, but this time he actually didn't show up. So
He actually
welcome,
meant it. Yeah. I think he had an appointment. Yeah. Welcome, Stoyan. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then. I will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Doug.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you all.
All right.